All right. So today we have a new uh, form of podcasting and video blogging with my friend Evangelos Simoudis. And he is, of course, at Synops Partners. And you can find this blog at corporateinnovation.co. And we're recording this on August 15th, Friday. And if you are on YouTube, please hit the subscribe button. And if you're subscribing to the podcast, thank you. And if you're not yet subscribing to the podcast, please do so wherever you get your podcasts. And so the first topic I want to talk about is what Evangelos has called the great hollowing out caused by AI. So roughly speaking, if I may describe it, it's this phenomenon where new college grads or people early on their career are having a hard time, much harder time, getting to that first rung in their career ladder. And that means that companies are losing kind of this junior source of talent, which of course is their main pipeline for their senior talent. And so, first of all, I guess, Evangelos, there's no such thing as causation here, right? So we cannot really directly tie anything to AI. But are you quite convinced that this set aside the hollowing out, but this phenomenon of new people are having a harder time getting jobs?
So my work in this area started for around 2019. And at that time, obviously, we didn't have generative AI in the same way that we have today, that we had the first papers had been published. But I gave a talk at the European Union's equivalent of Bureau of Labor Statistics. And the thesis of the talk was that we're starting to see, because of AI, a decoupling between productivity and wages. And one of the, I won't belabor the talk, but one of the conclusions that I reached was that organizations, governments and other organizations need to think about not the workforce as a whole, but really what will be the impact of the workforce in the various segments of the population, including the employable population. And I pointed out the fact that we have both an opportunity, but also a big risk with the younger, the post-high school graduates. And the point there is that as we automate more of the work that we expect these graduates to undertake, we have to worry about both what we do with them, right? And second, how we create a pipeline into the organization so that we will continue to have experts within the organization, because that need doesn't go away. And I'll talk about this in a minute. So fast forward to today, if we look at, I would say there is both anecdotal evidence, for example.
Oh, yeah. So in preparation for this conversation, I basically started drafting an article for my newsletter on this topic, and there's tons and tons of headlines around.
There is.
And so it cuts across job positions. A lot of the headlines are people in software engineering, young software engineering, fresh computer science graduates struggling to get jobs. But it also cuts across other jobs.
That's right. And as you know, because you referenced it a few days ago, I have created a spectrum of agents and how, as we increase the capability of AI agents, what is the role of the human. And but if I were to reduce that to our conversation today, I would say, given where we are with agents, there are certain jobs that have already been replaced, and I call those entry-level, low-skill, white collar, right? So those will be jobs like answering emails or creating certain scripts and whatnot. And I think that college graduates, I'm not talking about technology college
So
graduates.
to clarify, so not completely replaced, but reduced.
Well, we'll get to that. So I claim that there are certain jobs that are being replaced even from the companies that want to do it, given the capabilities of today's AI systems, including AI agents. Then there is a second level, what I call entry level but high skill white collar, and those will be things like paralegal or customer support or programming, certain types of programming, and those are starting to be replaced. But they cannot. I claim that based on today's technology, they cannot be replaced completely yet, right? And then the third level is the high skill white collar work, like a lawyer, right? And those are still not, we don't have the technology yet to replace them. We're striving for it, but we
But
don't. So,
we can make them super productive, so we need less of them. So my canonical example here is the junior entry level investment banking analysts who work on pitch books.
exactly.
You still need them because obviously you need to look at the end product very carefully, right?
Right.
So, but they can be super productive, right?
So if we look at some, just as in preparation for this conversation, I went and pulled out some recent data. So if I look at, and this data comes from the New York Fed, okay? So they have data that goes as recently as March of 25. And what we see there is that with regards to unemployment, the recent graduate unemployment, they peg at 5.8%, a slight increase over the past few months, which we used to hover around 5.3, 5.4%. If I look at college graduates, so they have two categories. They call it recent graduates and college graduates. And when they look at college graduates, the unemployment is slightly up from 2.6, it went to 2.7. Again, that's as recent as March of 25. What is more interesting to me is when we go to the underemployment category. So there they are, according to their data, again, same time frame, the unemployment has gone from the college graduates, it's up to about 33%, a little over 33%. And for their category that they call recent graduates, it's 41%. So that means that these individuals, it's a very high percentage of individuals who are underemployed. And to me, this is worrisome. And it's worrisome because these people, particularly the college graduates, typically have debt, because of their education. They tend to live in areas which have high costs, so that causes them to move. I mean, there was an article this morning in Wall Street Journal talk about people who, because they cannot find work or they cannot find the work with salaries that can sustain them, they end up living with their parents, finding conditions that are.
And the other thing that is critical here is those first few years are actually important in terms of building up your resume, right? So
Exactly.
because we're old enough to have lived through the dot-com bust and the great financial crisis, and depending on when you graduate, the first 2 years, your resume may not look as good as someone who graduated 2 years later, right? So,
Right. So this now, and when again, as part of the work that I had done for this 2019 presentation, is you have to look at how people in these white collar jobs learn, right? And how they learn is through socialization, by socializing with the experts, right, with the experienced people. So we are going to face a problem in certain positions where, as these experienced people retire, or if they cannot have this interaction with these graduates, then skill sets that are still necessary could be lost and may not be replaced as quickly by AI as we would have wanted them to.
And
The other point,
the other thing that I would like to note is that the very jobs that AI can automate, the so-called grunt work, are basically important rites of passage for a lot of these positions. This is actually where they learn about the profession, right?
exactly. This is the aspect of socialization that I'm talking about. Now, there's another important point to make here, which is as we incorporate AI, as we increase this automation, intelligent automation, new jobs are being created, right? So, and I'll mention two examples. In manufacturing right now, just in the US, we have about 400,000 open positions. Now, what is interesting about these positions, though, is that they require knowledge of advanced manufacturing systems, the new generation of manufacturing systems, which tend to be intelligently automated, not just automated because they have some numeric control, but they're intelligently automated. So there are opportunities there. The other opportunity which we see now, at least here in San Francisco in our everyday life, is this. What is happening with autonomous vehicles and robotaxis in particular. So robotaxis are making the role of the gig driver obsolete, right? But they are creating the role of the teleoperator. The point, though, is that we don't need as many teleoperators as we have gig drivers today. I mean, Uber employs whatever 3-4 million of these gig drivers. And over time, if our automation trajectory succeeds, we will not even need as many teleoperators. But again, so people talk about automation is creating new positions. And again, what we see in manufacturing and in robotaxis is indeed true. Right? We have new types of positions. We just don't need as many of them. And when we need them, we need people with very specialized skill, which again creates the dilemma. How do these people get to that skill level so that they can fulfill today's openings?
So to summarize this discussion, basically the thesis here is that there's some sort of AI doom loop in place already in the following sense. Automation is kind of reducing or eliminating certain jobs. Job applicants are using AI to generate resumes to apply for jobs, but companies are also using AI to screen out those resumes. So AI is actually making it harder overall to land positions, but particularly those types of entry-level positions that companies may see as kind of low-hanging fruit in terms of automation, but can really kind of impact their pipeline of talent moving forward.
So the argument that I'm making is that corporations, at least very recently, have started using the achievements that AI can give us as a way to improve their financial performance by laying off employees or by hiring fewer employees. And the argument is that they really need to think about the future here, because it is important to have that pipeline of people who start at the entry level, interact properly with the experts, with the seasoned professionals in the organization, and then become the seasoned individuals themselves.
And I mean, I think the other thing in closing to put out there for companies is there's many studies that show that this kind of mixed experience teams are actually quite important to have, right? To have that mix of novices and experts. A study seems to show that they actually outperform kind of the homogeneous experience groups. So that means for companies, you might have to redefine what an entry-level position is, or even reimagine what apprenticeships should be. Yeah, and so lots of things for companies to consider. We don't have answers at the moment, but we will continue discussing this, and we might revisit this topic in the future. All right, so next topic I wanted to touch on is this notion of asset depreciation in the age of AI, brought on by some recent tweets and interviews with the famous short seller Jim Chanos, who apparently was tweeting out on this topic from a yacht somewhere in Greece.
In the Mediterranean. I don't know. I mean, he's
Yeah.
Greek, but I don't know if he was in Greece. Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, so his observations were tied to Meta, but we believe this is actually a thing that's broader than Meta. But yeah, so we can use that as a concrete example. So what he's saying is that what he noticed in Meta's earnings statements is that they are still depreciating chip costs over 11 to 12 years. But when you actually look at the resale value of these chips, maybe the right time frame is 2 to 3 years. That might be their actual useful life. So first of all, Evangelist, to you, is this a real thing? Or is this a case of Jim Chanos not really understanding AI hardware?
I think it is a real thing, and I think it will depend on how we choose to move forward with AI. I will add to Janos's comment that in the corporations that we work with, it's finally starting to dawn on them that using AI, specializing, fine-tuning models, going from pilots to production is not inexpensive. And how they choose to do that, I think, will determine whether Chanos's comments are right or wrong. I mean, I was talking to an investment analyst.
Oh, you mean
earlier.
whether or not they actually buy this hardware on their own and depreciate them on their own?
Or whether they buy it on their own, but also how long they keep the hardware. So in other words, if you're thinking about how do I reduce, because if you look at new data centers, right, everybody's talking about, the hyperscalers are talking about building new capacity, data center capacity. Well, the driver for this cost is not the building, it's not the power, it's really the chip. Right. I mean, if you think
I
about
think 60,
chips costing
60 to
GPUs
70%.
costing
Yeah.
$30,000-$40,000 each, right? So
Yeah, I
the
think
question,
it's 60 to 70% of capex.
maybe even more, according at least to this.
Now, here's a question to channel our listeners here, right? So I get it that the chips actual useful value, where they're really cutting edges, maybe in the order of 2 to 3 years, maybe less. But we all have iPhones, right? So obviously, the new iPhones are more energy efficient, have more features, but we continue to use them. So can an argument be made for companies saying, yeah, we can depreciate this over 11 to 12 years? Because sure, when you look at the resale value of these chips, they're bad after 2 to 3 years, but we can still use the old chips for inference or other things. So
Exactly.
so what is the counter argument to the Chanos argument?
So the counter argument to me is that organizations, whether it is corporations, governments, whatever, they will come to realize that, and I think even the experience that we've had with DeepSeek showed some of that. I don't always need the latest and greatest in order to provide value. And I think it will come to a definition, what value do I want to see from my AI, and how important to the derivation of that value is for me to have the latest and greatest in the quantities that I have today. And it may be that, of course, that's not a very good news for the likes of NVIDIA and AMD and other specialized chip makers. But I think it will come a time where organizations will have to start creating gradations of where they want to use the latest and greatest and make the investment and replace the capability that they have today, and where the capability that they have today is good enough. And so what we will be looking for is what happens in the next couple of years, because again, for the capacity that is being installed recently, these chips will still have 2 to 3 years. So in 2 to 3 years, we will have to start seeing how much of the budget, of the capital budget, it is allocated for replacement versus for adding capacity because of demand. And if there is adding capacity due to demand, then you can create the right business model not to continue losing money like companies are losing today, then you're in good shape. But the replacement, how much of your budget is going to be allocated for replacing the existing chips, I think that will be very telling on whether Chanosys is right or wrong.
And so the key here is, when someone puts a financial statement and says, we're going to depreciate this over 11 to 12 years, make sure you keep following up future financial statements, because, maybe in the fine print there, they already tossed some of the chips from the previous financial statements, right? So,
Exactly.
yeah. All right. So the last topic I want to talk about has to do with GPT-5, and basically, so anyone who uses ChatGPT probably awoke last week to a completely new interface where the legacy models kind of disappeared. They got, I think, some of them got brought back. 4.0 may have gotten brought back after a week, but instead of having the ability to granularly select your model from the ChatGPT interface, you basically now have 3 selections, and it has to do with the router that you want to use, right? So it seems like a lot of the models are now buried behind routers, and so what are the implications of this moving forward for not just OpenAI, but assuming their competitors adopt the same strategy? So,
Look, to me, this is very much a process of finding the right business models. I think the foundation model providers, starting with OpenAI, are coming to realize that they cannot. Yes, it's great to be adding monthly active users, but you need to find a business model that will work long term, because now they have an ability to raise capital, but I don't believe that, and I think they realize that this ability will not continue forever. And to me, the experimentation that is going on through these routers, because I believe there is a lot of experimentation that's going on behind the scenes, is very similar to what Google went through in the early 2000s as they were transitioning from a search utility without a business model to what became their advertising business model, right? And I think that search is going on right now, starting with OpenAI, but I think the other foundation model providers are going, if they're not already following that approach, they will follow that approach, because they need to find a way to monetize the user, and that monetization in their case will come from, that's where the routing is important, will come from how they value each query, and to what type of processing power they assign that query, right? So if I ask the question, can I what is a good Italian restaurant in Palo Alto? That query has one particular value. if I ask who is a good dermatologist in Palo Alto, that has a very different value because it can imply a very different intent and a very different value to that.
I suppose so. Two things. So I suppose uh, depending on your tier of your subscription, you get a different user experience. And number two, also depending on the value of the query, then you might start having paid content, right?
Exactly, and I think that again, I'm sure that this is going on in the CFOs of in the financial operations of these companies. Is that you're also trying to think of if I'm going to make a recommendation, what is the value of that recommendation to the entity that is being recommended? Right. So, what is the value of the recommendation to that dermatologist that I'm going to recommend, or to whoever?
So do you think but they will still have subscription tiers regardless, because
They will, but again,
otherwise people will hammer the service and they lose money if you keep using the service heavily, right?
So I believe that even with subscription, in most cases, foundation model providers continue to lose
Of
money
course,
per
yeah, yeah,
user, per subscriber.
of course, yeah.
I also see, again, another thing that we're seeing, because we are paid subscribers to certain of these models, our firm is, that is, um, for our heavy users, even when they have the high-end subscription, we after a while we do get messages such
Yeah.
as, well, you exceeded your limit, and things like that, which means that they're starting to mind. I mean, these companies are starting to mind how the power of their models is being used, and because they're trying to limit their losses or to contain their losses in some way. So I think that their routers will give them a way, combined with this experimentation, to start assigning value to both the user but also to the recipient of a particular recommendation.
So prediction is that Google and Anthropic and Grok will follow suit.
I believe so. Yes,
All right.
I believe so.
And so with that, thank you, Evangelist. So I'll check the episode notes at the dataexchange.media.